You're welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Now, starting from 2024, all babies are expected to be vaccinated against hepatitis B. That's contained in the latest framework of the Ghana Health Service as it ramps up its fight against the growing number of cases in the country. Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Kuma-Boaji, and all infants will be administered the hepatitis B vaccine within 24 hours of birth. He was speaking at the launch of this year's World Hepatitis Day.
Hepatitis B is a serious inflammation of the liver caused by the hepatitis B virus. Globally, it is estimated that around 3 million individuals live with hepatitis B and another 71 million live with hepatitis C. In Ghana, unfortunately, the diagnosis and treatment of viral hepatitis remain at alarmingly low levels. This is primarily due to a lack of awareness and high cost of treatment. At the press launch for this year's World Hepatitis Day, the Director General of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Patrick Kuma-Boaji, stated that in an effort to meet the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals for hepatitis, they will begin the vaccination of newborns against the hepatitis B infections starting next year.
Recognizing the growing burden of hepatitis, we have as a country and as part of the SDG containment drive set out to diagnose 90% of hepatitis B and C cases and put 80% on treatment by the year 2030. Again, all pregnant women living with chronic hepatitis B are to have access to treatment, while all infants will receive hepatitis B vaccine at birth within 24 hours of birth to prevent infection. Recent maternal hepatitis B survey has yielded concrete results to inform decisions on hepatitis B birth dose, and very soon HBV birth dose will be introduced in Ghana. The Ghana Health Service, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and with support from our Global Fund and WHO, will in 2024 implement the triple elimination of hepatitis B, along with HIV and syphilis. The antenatal service package will be expanded to include testing pregnant women for hepatitis B, with the necessary treatment offered to those needing it.
The program's manager for the National Viral Hepatitis Control Program, Dr. Achu Siakikao, highlighted effective measures to prevent the transmission of the disease.
Now, there are effective interventions against hepatitis B and C, which are summarized here. Vaccination is key. Prevention of mother-to-child transmission, including birth dose vaccination. Infection prevention is very important, and because many times we see people go down to the waste containers picking anything, including needles and sharps. It's not the best. Harm reduction for people who inject drugs is very important so that they don't use infected needles for the purpose. Importantly for you and I also is testing and effective treatment for both B and C, which must reach everybody who needs it.
The representative of the Hepatitis Coalition of Ghana, Theobald Owusu-Ansah, presented a lineup of activities for this year's World Hepatitis Day.
On the 25th, there's going to be hepatitis B screening and vaccination at Medina Market and STT Yard from 28 July. And when you find yourself in Volta region, that's all, there's going to be hepatitis B and C screening and free vaccination. And those at Cape Coast, you can also join the free screening at Cape Coast Teaching Hospital. In front of Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, we are doing screening and vaccination there. And also, Ridge Hospital on 28, there's going to be a free screening and vaccination at Ridge Hospital. And Tamale, those who are in Tamale, you can also join as the free screening and vaccination and education.
Living a healthy lifestyle is important in protecting yourself against the silent threat of hepatitis. Esther Nkrumah.
Now, 2 weeks ago, Global Peace Index was released, in which Ghana dropped behind countries like Sierra Leone, a country that has been through war in recent times. That was a blow to this country, as we are primarily known for our peaceful nature. So what is it that is pushing us down the rankings, and what can we do to salvage it? The institution set up by our Constitution to address this is the National Peace Council. How relevant is this council and its work to you and to our development? We want to understand them and what they go through in ensuring that the country is peaceful, and also their challenges. Joining us for this conversation is the Executive Secretary of the National Peace Council, Mr. George Amo. Now, before we start our conversation, though, let's very quickly bring you details of the Global Peace Index. Here's how we performed. Okay, so this compares our performance in 2022 to the year 2021. Okay, first of all, we ranked 51st for peace around the world, and in Africa we were the fourth most peaceful country on the continent, and the 51st in the world. Now look at how it compares to our performance last year. Okay, last year we were the 40th most peaceful country in the world. That clearly has dropped by 11 places to 51st. And in Africa we were the second. We are now the fourth. Okay, now they measure a number of things: the level of societal safety and security, the extent of ongoing domestic and international conflict, and the degree of militarization. And these are the things that they look at to arrive at their decisions, okay? But here's the reality. Peace is correlated with money. There are financial consequences of not being as peaceful as we were the year before. So have a look at this. In 2021, the cost of violence in Ghana was $10.5 billion. In 2022, the cost of violence is $10.1 billion. There's a difference here of $400 million. Okay, now this includes expenditure and the economic effect related to containing, preventing, and dealing with the consequences of violence. All right, so let's engage in a conversation. Mr. George Amo is here. He's the Executive Secretary of the National Peace Council. Mr. Amo, it's a pleasure to have you. Yes. Now, your council has a massive mandate. We rely on you for quite a lot because, as we have demonstrated, peace, is not just an abstract idea. Yeah. There are numbers to it. There are figures to it. There are costs to it. And we seem to be doing worse. Now, before we get into why that might be, maybe you could help us with a bit of education about the National Peace Council, what you are mandated to do, and perhaps if you can summarize your history for us to bring us all the way up to date.
All right, thank you so much, Kojo and the Joy News team. We are very grateful. The Peace Council was established, amidst conflicts. So out of the difficulties that engulfed the country somewhere in 1994, 1995, I'm referring to the Nanumba-Kukumba war, which led to some deaths. Out of that experience, some civil society groups, particularly the Catholic Bishops' Conference, led by Right Reverend Philip Name at the time, and the Catholic Relief Services, the Action Aid Ghana, Well Vision, and among others, mobilize support, for peaceful interventions. And out of that, something we call Secutaps, Center for Conflict Transformation and Peace Studies, was set up in Damango, which became like a reference point for dealing with conflicts from time to time. Then somewhere in 2002, remember the unfortunate death of the Yana. So when the Yana's death also occurred, the forces for a mechanism, a kind of peace infrastructure, to continuously deal with our violence and conflict issues was gathering momentum. So the whole nation, the Ministry for Interior came in somewhere 2006. A framework was developed. Under that time, Honorable Kandapa was the Minister for the Interior, and he started a process, because civil society had already begun the process, and a framework was developed. Then fortunately, Honorable Martin came and firmed up the process. So somewhere in 2010, in Parliament, a bill was introduced, and the president at the time, President Mills, the late President Mills, in May 2011, signed the bill, which resulted in the creation of the National Peace Council, the act, which I have a copy here. So that is the history of the National Peace Council. The mandate, as set out in Section 2, is to facilitate and develop mechanisms. So that is the core mandate. Facilitate and develop mechanisms. Mechanisms to do what? To prevent, to manage, and to resolve conflicts. So that is the mandate cut out for us. So our first objective is to prevent. If we are unable to prevent, we manage, and if we're able to resolve, happy we are. The overall effect is to ensure that this country keeps our peace, or sustainable peace as we would want to put it. So that is the Peace Council. We do a lot of things. We are supposed to be a coordinating mechanism to harmonize peace initiatives and peace actions in the country. We are supposed to build capacity, to ensure that people like even yourself, because the media, sometimes you are confronted with conflict matters. How do we help society to provide a better mechanism for addressing our differences instead of resorting to the machete, the gun, or whatever. So that is what we do. We also create awareness, of nonviolent uses. Instead of using the violent ways, there are violent mechanisms. What are they, and how are people able to, use them in addressing their conflict issues? So that is what the Peace Council has been doing since 2006. You remember Peter Appiah-Texan Cardinal was the first chair. When he left, Most Reverend Asante, Emmanuel Asante took over. And now we have Reverend Dr. Enesedi Jemfi, who is the chair. So that has been our history. I think Ghanaians are best judges. I think we've done quite a lot. Basically, behind the scenes, we do even more. But it's unfortunate, referring to the Peace Index.
Yes.
This country, one of the key indicators, if somebody is talking about Ghana from outside, our peace is something that clearly defines or identifies us as a people. So we have jealously guided this enviable record. But unfortunately, the latest Global Peace Index released, as you rightly referred to, we lost our position as the most peaceful within the West Africa.
What happened? I mean, what did we do wrong?
Yeah, there are three basic, I think you've said it here, the internal domestic issues, security issues, one, militarization, another, then I think the last one is safeguarding. Let me check it from here. Ongoing domestic, international conflict, degree of militarization, then our security, and safety issues. If you look at it, we performed quite well in the first two, safety and security, domestic, we did a bit well there. No, the militarization, sorry. The domestic was where we had a problem, right. Because if you look at our country now, since 2021, chieftaincy conflicts have been, I think, our biggest bane as a people. If you take out the economy, which we all know, the troubles we are currently encountering, chieftaincy has been, and over the past year, we haven't had it easy in terms of chieftaincy conflicts here and there, particularly, in the Upper East region. The Boku conflict, we all know, didn't help matters. And, there's another one, very close to Boku, so combined effect, if you go to a lot, they have a lot. In fact, a total of almost 310 cases now, all over the country that the Peace Council is handling.
So let me ask you this. I mean, chieftaincy disputes.
Yeah.
The rest of civilization has solved this problem centuries ago.
Is that so?
Well, yeah. What is it that makes it difficult for us, to resolve issues of succession, of land ownership, or, things that because I mean, if you go to any other place where there's a monarchy or a royalty, it's already determined.
Yeah.
Who comes next, who comes after whom,
Yeah.
or how to determine who comes next and who comes after whom.
Yeah.
Land, they've demarcated all land. They know who owns what to the last grain of sand. What's our problem?
Kojo, you see, even in our family setup, who succeeds who is not properly defined. I remember when my father passed, it became a kind of a struggle. Who should succeed him? So it has been a problem. I'm not sure it is only a Ghanaian problem, but Africa and beyond. Our case, I think, is a bit of serious because even as a country, I have tried to research whether this country will ever came together to agree to the kind of union we wanted as a people. Did we bring our traditional rulers? Did we bring our religious leaders? Did we assemble the youth, to agree that this is the kind of state we want to have ourselves? I think that one. I'm not sure. I've tried. So it has been an endemic problem, a systemic problem that as a country we have not confronted well. And that, I think, has reflected in our traditional governance and even, I think, in our republic. So it is a huge issue. I think the president himself is concerned. We met him somewhere early this year, and it is an issue that is of a great concern, because until we are able to deal with the chieftaincy conflict in the country, development cannot succeed.
So, I mean, this is the space that you study. This is the space in which you operate. So help us understand. I mean, who is failing? What is it that has made it difficult for us to have that conversation, whether it's within individual tribes or whether it's as a national conversation, to say that, look, from this year forward, this is how things will be determined.
Yeah.
And then we pass the necessary laws to codify it, and then we can just sit back and enjoy some peace.
Yeah, I think some efforts have begun. The House of Chiefs, I think, have started something, to codify, who is the next. It shouldn't be in doubt. If you go to the northern part of Ghana, most of those parts were acephalous, before this chieftaincy, institutions were introduced. So the House of Chiefs have started it. We just have to give them the backing, the logistics and the financial backing. I think we as a peace institution, we are ready. We met them somewhere 2 years ago, and this issue came up strongly. So the conversation has started. I think we don't have to, relax on that. We have to push it. I think the state, as a country, our people, including you, of course, our media partners, we should all mobilize, like we've done for Galamsey, because what is happening in chieftaincy probably is more than a Galamsey that is killing all of us. So how do we resolve these things once and for all? It's not going to be easy, because traditions and customs are not, they're sensitive some very emotive, can arouse people's emotions, etc. So we need to begin the conversation, probably at the traditional level, gradually to the national, I don't know, but we may also start from a national conversation and see how it can trickle down, to our various traditional areas. It is a problem. And I think all of us, Ghanaians, would have to realize that this is an issue that is confronting this country. And until we deal with it head on, me and you, probably we are grown, you are still young, but those, our children coming up, they may face more serious problems.
You've talked about some of the things that are being done to help resolve these long-standing issues. You talked about what the chieftaincy House of Chiefs yes. Has been doing. Situate the Peace Council in this process. What role have you been playing?
Yes, we have planned, put some few things in place. One is to have a national dialogue on the issue, so that we bring on board all those stakeholders relevant, for this issue to be addressed. The House of Chiefs itself. How do we bring in civil society? Those that are mentioned, and we have quite a number now. How do we bring in our politicians? How do we bring in the youth groups? Because they are very, very important. Our political parties as well. So that we can assemble somewhere, probably keep ourselves for some 3 days to think through what has gone wrong. How do we, correct the wrongs that have happened? And how do we chart a path? And that will ensure that if it is Mr. George Amoy's Kujo, who is supposed to be the next heir to a throne, that will not be in dispute. And I think we have good examples. The Ashanti Kingdom has been very strong on that. What are the lessons we can learn? If there are areas we can share notes, these are some of the things we can do, to ensure we are able to. So a national conversation about the issue, I think, is important.
And that's what the Peace Council is engaging in. Do you have timelines for this? When will this conversation begin?
The issue is that it is the financial issues has to be addressed. And I know that we are trying to mobilize the resources from both government and our development partners, to see what is it that we can do. And we want to do it as quickly as possible. But what is keeping us is because we do not have all the resources,
Let's talk about that a little bit. How is the Peace Council funded?
By government. Indeed, government pays all our salaries, emoluments, etc., for the board members and for the staff. As we speak, we have about 67 regular staff, and those seconded about 30. So we are a little over 100 across the country. So basically, government support us in terms of the 3 government areas: goods and services for our programs, compensation for our salaries and allowances, then what we call CAPEX, or capital expenditures for things like the desk and etc. So government does that, but in terms of programs, our money from the state has never been enough. Like others also suffer. So we depend mostly on our development partners. Just yesterday, for example, I think Joy FM was there to cover the UNDP and the Danish embassy. Launched a project that we want to, help, address, particularly this threat of violent extremism and terrorism that is, coming up from the Sahelian countries. So that is how we are funded. It has never been enough, but.
I can imagine the difficulties. What tend to be the risk factors of being funded by government? I ask this because in any part of the world where serious conflict has broken out.
Yeah.
Very often, the government of the day is a party in that conflict, is one of the parties in that conflict. God forbid that ever happens in Ghana. But this is a reality. It happens elsewhere, so it is a possibility. Do you find that presents some risk factors for your institution, bearing in mind you have to rely so heavily on government funding?
But I think that should be the way to go. I mean, why should somebody outside the state fund a critical issue like peace, without which development cannot take place? So I think that the country would have to take that responsibility and take it head on. Because, if any government will succeed, we have been meeting MMDCs and we tell them, if your tenure will be a successful one, it depends largely on the peacefulness or otherwise of the place. Yeah. If your term is engulfed with violence here and there, even the mind to think about development, I'm not sure will be there. So it is in our interest as a people, and I think government is the best place to fund peace initiatives.
Right.
That will really secure our security and safety as a people.
Let's talk about some of the recent events that have brushed up against our ambitions of peace.
Yeah.
So you've already mentioned the conflict in the north that keeps breaking out over and over again. But even before we talk about that, we've also had issues with, there was recently a court case involving some Trans-Volta Togoland people and their desire to break away from the Republic of Ghana. It grew into a modicum of a movement, and there were some violent outbursts and so forth. Did the Peace Council see itself in that process? What role did you play?
Yeah, thank you very much, Guido, once again. We realized that was something that can hurt this country, and therefore we didn't rest at all. The board quickly mobilized resources, and government came in to support us. And what we did was, because we use the non-kinetic approach, the military, the police, they use the kinetic. So we believe that the non-kinetic is able to address relational issues, and all these things, they are basically relational issues. If somebody doesn't feel belonged, if somebody, for whatever reason, feels that I'm not respected, that person can do a whole lot of things, including what happened.
Yeah.
So what we did as a peace institution with our mandate in mind was to dialogue with the Volta region and the OT region as it is today. So we went to as many as 18 communities to take their views as to what they perceive to be discrimination, etc. But while doing this, we had the secessionist group, the Papavis group, in mind. So we had some engagements with the group. We cannot touch on matters that border on criminality. So those ones, we leave them to the state to handle, the government to handle. And the institutions are so designed to do so. So we dialogue with them, came up with a number of recommendations as to how we can deal with the issues once and for all. So we have that.
What were some of the recommendations?
And quite a number of them, that the people are discriminated against in terms of employment. Even the very the name that you bear, sometimes becomes an issue. So development, lack of development, also came up as one key issue that they've been left out. And respect, like you said here, for that section of Ghana, did not seem to be the attention of government and those who are, managing our affairs. So issues of exclusion, issues of marginalization, discrimination, came up strongly. And some of them I know government has started, tackling them. The road networks, for example, that, has been neglected. I think government started doing something about it. Another issue that came up strongly was, the continuous stay of the military at the borders. We know that just after, that conversation, that issue was also addressed. So something has been done. Would
you say the recommendations have been implemented to the point where this would never happen again?
No, I'm not saying so at all. The guys who have been in prison, for example, that issue also came up. Yes, that's released them. But, that is not for us to decide. We would make the recommendations as to how to go about this in a way that would sustain the peace of the country. But the states and the police may have how they also see things, the judiciary may have so we did ours. Ours is to collate the views. What is it that we can do to keep this country together, to avoid the occurrence of the movement like the Papa V's group? And that we have done and submitted our report.
Let's talk about the conflict in the north. This one is just, it's been going on for so long.
Yeah.
The issues keep evolving, the players, coming and going. It's a very volatile situation. Talk to us about the Peace Council's efforts, whether or not they, well, in fact, let me qualify. Talk to us about the Peace Council's efforts and why, in spite of them, we still have this conflict.
Yeah, conflict is very fluid. You cannot determine its movement so easily. But the UNDP came to the support of the Peace Council somewhere in 2015, to set up what we call the Boku Interethnic Peace Committee in respect to the Boku conflict. Because conflict aspect will tell you, you cannot import, solutions. You would have to use, people within the area, those who are affected. So what we did was to set up the Boku Interethnic Peace Committee. And the Boku Interethnic Peace Committee was made up of both Kusasis and the Mampresis, and other tribes in the area, the Bisas, even the Dagbanis, they are there. So we set up a 20-member committee, and they selected a chair, a vice chair, and etc., and to, as it were, evaluate the situation from time to time, become the early warning mechanism there to offer the transition of issues, like early warnings. If, for example, they get an issue that they think the Peace Council at the head office can help address, quickly they do that. If it's a RECSEC, quickly they do that. So that was the method the Peace Council applied, and it was working until, I think 2021, when the unfortunate, recurrence happened. So we still believe that it is workable, because you cannot, myself and you cannot go and proffer any solution. What we can do is provide expert advice. But the solution rests with the people. And I am very confident, Kojo, that we should not, leave Boku or any other conflict area. We have to support them. Doba Kandiga, also in the Upper East region, had gone through a similar situation like the Boku issue. But the chiefs themselves have been able, to find a solution. The Peace Council provided technical support, but they have found a solution, and we believe that it's just a matter of time. Boku will find a solution. Right. What we have to fight against are those behind the scenes, the periphery, some people call them conflict entrepreneurs, right, who are behind the scenes and providing the support for them to do what they are doing.
Right.
I think that we have to cut. And if all of us were able to mobilize ourselves, including the media, because there are media stations over there who are also not allowing the matters to rest.
Yeah. I can't let you leave without asking about this. One of your most recent endeavors was to bring peace between Archbishop Ajinasare and the people of Nogopu. How's that going?
I think we didn't expect that to happen, but it happened. This is how we did it. Our regional office, we have regional offices across the country. So the Volta Regional Peace Council first issued a statement. And we also approached the Nogobo people. And we approached, indeed, the Perez Chapel as well. And requested for a kind of a dialogue, to address this matter, because we didn't think that this should degenerate into where it was going to go.
I have to apologize sincerely. I do have to cut in because something is happening and I'm learning about it in my ear. This has been fascinating, though. I think we should have more conversations about Peace Council and the work you're doing. But I've got to very quickly tell you about this. Kwabena Ajapong has just come out of a meeting at the NPP headquarters, and following his exit from this meeting, we have been trying to get some comment from him, not just him, but other dignitaries who have been in this meeting. Currently, Alexander Afenyo Markin is about to address some gathered journalists. Let's find out what we can learn about this meeting.
We briefed you on Monday and indicated that we're going to have a further engagement today. I'm happy to announce that we've had a very successful engagement with 8 of the aspirants were present. 2 were represented. Vice President Bahamadu Bawumia was represented, and then Dr. Kofi Konedu Apreku was also represented. But I think 7. Honorable Jogati was also represented. So we had 7 out of the 10 aspirants present. And we had our engagement, and we deliberated on few matters that were of concern. We were able to build consensus on the nagging issues and incorporated same in the guidelines. We've agreed that the Electoral Commission is going to take charge of the elections and see to all the security arrangements as well. Party agent of the aspirant will also oversee to the printing of the ballot papers. So the ballot papers won't be printed by the party. It will be printed by the Electoral Commission. And all that we would do is to furnish them with the details of the aspirants, including their pictures. We've given them the type of picture they are supposed to bring. So everything has been agreed upon. The notice of polls would be put out. Proxy has been agreed upon. There's going to be proxy, and notice will be issued, and deadline for all proxies will be on the 2nd. And all proxy lists will be furnished the aspirants. We also agreed to ensure that the list of delegates, the album in this case, will also be furnished the aspirants. Now, let me inform you the order that the aspirants will appear on the ballot papers. Ken Ohine Japan, number 1. Alan John Kojo Tremantin, number 2. Joe Gate, number 3. Kwejo Poku, number 4. Dr. Owusu Afriya Koto, number 5. Kwabena Ejapong, number 6. Francis Adainumo, number 7. Dr. Kofi Konedu Apreku, number 8. Boachi Tremantin Ejako, number 9. His Excellency Dr. Mahamadou Bawumia, number 10. So this is the order that the aspirants will appear on the ballot paper from 1 to 10. So it's been signed by the vice chair of the committee and the electoral commission director of operations. I must say that the balloting was successful. We did a first round of balloting where the aspirants picked the order in which they will pick their positions. So the ballot papers went round. In fact, they picked them randomly themselves. And then when we were able to determine the order in which they were going to pick their positions and they were satisfied, we rolled out the second phase of the process, which now allowed those who picked certain numbers to pick in that order, and they did so intense. Thank you so much indeed.
No, did the aspirants sign any undertaking?
To do what?
I mean, as part of your guidelines, we were told that...
you were told by who?
I mean, as part of your guidelines, it was indicated that anyone
who... It was indicated by who?
By what you publish.
What did you publish?
Anyone who does not make it or fails in his bid will support the eventual winner.
Who said what?
That was in the undertaking.
That what? Wait.
It was signed by the general
undertaking by who?
It was your point 5 in the guidelines for the primaries for the president. That all the aspirants will be required to sign an undertaking.
Which undertaking is to the effect that?
To support whoever wins the election.
No, but those are... No, please. Deal with the issue of balloting. That is today's item. Let's go step by step. We've had a fruitful engagement. 7 aspirants were present. 3 were represented. Today is a major phase. We've completed this phase. We are going to have another engagement with them. If we get to any point of relevance of which you have inquired, we would duly announce that to you. All right? All right. What I'm saying is this: that as part of the processes, aspirants will be furnished with the album. I said so, and I'm sure I was very clear. Therefore, let's take one step at a time. Today, we have done the balloting. It's been very successful. All of them are happy. We've built consensus on the guidelines, and we are going to move on accordingly. So fear not, worry not. Let's take one at a time. Thank you very much indeed.
So, Blessed, you heard the spokesperson for the elections committee, Honorable Martin Afeya-Markins, there, telling us what happened. We know that initially, or the first meeting that was on Monday, there were issues pertaining to the modalities that actually led to a postponement of this balloting. So today we are told the issues have been resolved and the balloting has been conducted successfully, and that was a list that he mentioned to you. So 7 aspirants were here by themselves, but 3 of them were represented by their representatives in the course of the balloting. So the official poll, notice of poll would be published, and then the election or the rest of the election processes would continue. I must say that I've spoken to some of the aspirants, and they say they are satisfied with the exercise so far, and what they are expecting is that the election should be free, transparent for all of them there. So that has been the situation here at the MPP headquarters here in Accra. So the party too also talks about the fact that they also give them the photo album, and if they have issues, they'll be able to rectify them at the early stage. The Electoral Commission, per the party, is going to take charge of the printing of the ballots and then supervising the elections. We know that other issues of the modalities also came up. They said they have discussed and then drawn a consensus with the aspirants as to how the elections would be conducted at the decentralized point here. So all is over. It has been over 2-hour meeting with the aspirants here, and then I must say that the aspirants whom we spoke to have expressed satisfaction about the entire exercise so far. Blessed.
Well, thank you very much. Our very own Samuel Mbura, who has been keeping an eye on the NPP's preparations for their primaries. So now we know how it's all supposed to unfold. We know who will be situated where on the ballot, with the vice president taking the 10th position. That's one I remember. Dr. KK Apreku will be on the 8th position, and Kennedy Ajapong will be number 1, followed by Alan Chermanting in the 2nd position. Joe Gate takes up the 3rd position. Kojo Poku is in position number 4. Dr. Ifri Akoto is number 5. Kwabena Ejapong is number 6. And Mr. Adainimo takes up the 7th position. As I mentioned, KK Apreku is in the 8th position. Alan Chairman, Mr. Wachi Ejakon is in the number 9 position, which means Dr. Bawumia takes up the 10th slot on the ballot. All right, so there we are, all up to date. And of course, if anything else unfolds, you know you'll get it right here on your election headquarters. Joy News will continue to bring you updates as they unfold. We're going to take a break now because there's a lot more for us to discuss when we come back, including a massive conference in Gomwafete. Everybody is there. Why shouldn't you be? Come back and we go. Oh, good, you're back. Now, former presidents John Agyekum Kufuor and John Mahama are among the dignitaries this afternoon at the National Development Dialogue, which was organized by the Church of Pentecost. It's not just them. The Speaker of Parliament, the Chief Justice, the Vice President, who's representing the President, are all there. In effect, this is perhaps the most powerful collection of Ghanaians in one room. So, what is the plan of the Church of Pentecost? Well, they believe the nation's development needs a rethink. And these individuals, as well as our MPs and other Ghanaians, are crucial in changing this narrative. We're going to hear from key speakers shortly. But first, let's listen to the chairman of the Church of Pentecost, Apostle Dr. Eric Nyamiche. He addressed the gathering to open the conference.
Why is she coming into these matters? Many reasons, many reasons. But I will limit myself to 3. I will limit myself to 3. The purpose of the church is the transformation of this flag, the flag of Ghana. This flag, every flag, please let me have it. Yeah, this one. That is the purpose of the church. That is why we are salt and we are the lights of the world. If it doesn't shine in the darkness, then you can't call it light. The purpose of the church is the transformation of this flag. Number 2, history invites us to join in the conversation of national development. Number 3, righteousness exalts a nation.
So that set the tone. We can now hear from the former president, John Agyekum Kufuor, former President Mahama, Vice President Dr. Bawumia, Speaker of Parliament, and the Chief Justice.
And we are all here to consider how we deliberate on the development of our nation using moral vision. And as I've said, you don't talk morality without talking humanity. So Pentecostal Church has done well in organizing this huge meeting, and I'm sure the meeting is also being relayed across the nation. I wish you success. So over the next 2 or 3 days of the forum, you come up with ways and means to enable the people generally to contribute to find the way forward towards developing our nation without the biases and, if you like, the unkindness that we tend to display to each other, even as we try to develop our country.
What happened to our value of being each other's keeper, each his brother's keeper, where communal assistance to each other on our farms and in other tasks that we had to undertake were easily available. What happened to our abhorrence of greed and theft? Why do we celebrate persons who today are wealthy with dubious sources of income, and yet society is not concerned about what the source of income is, and it's only about the person's wealth? Ladies and gentlemen, ethics have a direct impact on national development. And as a student of history, I can say unequivocally that in history, all civilizations that have fallen have done so after they lost their moral and ethical compass. It is our prayer that Ghana continues to maintain its moral compass in order that we can continue to ensure national development, prosperity, and dignity for our people.
We have also digitalized the operations of many government institutions, and in the process, we have reduced corruption in those institutions. I mean, we at the ports, for example, we've instituted a paperless port system. One of the interesting things about the implementation of the paperless porting system was the resistance of the customs officers when we wanted to make the operations paperless. The officers on day one, the first day of the operations of the paperless port system, some of them organized demonstrations against the system because they did not want the system to work. But we persisted, and the system is working. We have digitalized the operations of the DVLA, and it's now one of the world-class institutions operating in the country. You don't really need guru boys and to pay bribes to work in that. Applying for a passport today is a very easy process. You don't need to go and pay guru boys. You can do it online. It will be delivered for you, and you can proceed. Electricity Company of Ghana, today you can buy your credit on your mobile phone. And it is very, very simple. I will tell you one thing. We noticed a very, very interesting piece of data which speaks to the problems at ECG. We looked at the data, and for a period of 4 years or so, the revenues of ECG were virtually constant. I said, this cannot be possible. How can you get more customers and your revenue is constant? And the interesting thing was that the value was virtually the same, the constant value. They didn't even take their time to change the value. So we said, no, we need to send in a team to look at the architecture of revenue collections at ECG and digitalize the process properly. So we sent in a team to ECG. They were collecting 450 million Ghana cedis a month. When we sent in the team, there was sabotage. Malware was introduced into the system by people working right there. We worked through that with the help of national security, and we then brought in a whole new architecture for ECG, thanks to the Minister for Energy, Matthew Poku Prempa. We brought in a whole new architecture for ECG. And after this completion of this work from the digitalization process, 450 million a month has now increased to 1.2 billion every month. Just think about it. You've increased from 450 million to 1.2 billion by doing nothing but making sure all payments are now electronic, no cash, and reconfiguring the architecture of the payment system at ECG. That's all we did. Similarly, at the passport office, we have increased revenue from 1 million Ghana cedis a year to 64 million Ghana cedis a year. So these things, when you look at the nature of behavior in these institutions, there was clearly a lot of leakage. But through digitalization, we are compelling behavior which is morally upright.
It is clear that the constitutional mandate given to the judiciary in Article 125 of the 1992 Constitution to administer justice requires us to maintain and enforce the highest standards of ethical conduct in the nation on one hand, and uphold the innate need of the human soul for justice on the other hand. This is a duty that the judiciary shares with the church as an institution. Justice is a sine qua non for peace, stability, and quality of life in any nation. In words attributed to Pope John Paul II, if you want peace, work for justice, unquote. A nation that loses interest in the rule of law and delivery of justice is one that sets itself up for destruction.
Good character builds trust. Without trust, people will never follow you. And without followers, obviously, one cannot lead. It will be a walk in the park. Therefore, effective leadership requires integrity. As leaders, particularly political leaders, we must be willing to be held accountable for our actions and inactions. We must conduct ourselves in a manner that is beyond the behavior of Pompey's wife. That is beyond reproach. And we must uphold the highest standards of ethics and morality.
Right, lots of talk there about rethinking Ghana, seeking an ideal Ghana. What would that Ghana look like? Well, let's talk about it with somebody who was there. Carlos, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Quite an event. Everybody who is everybody was gathered there. Let's talk about that. You know, presidents, former presidents, two of them, vice president, speaker of parliament, almost every MP you've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Tell us about the atmosphere that was created by these dignitaries.
So I think that it was a very charged atmosphere, and most of the MPs who were there, you could tell that these are people who really want to take this dialogue serious. The fact that we as a nation, we need to rethink the way we do things in terms of our moral fiber and all that. So within the room, when the speakers were actually making their statement, you could see applause and all those things, showing that the participants themselves were happy with the message being delivered.
Yeah. The vice president spoke for quite some time. He made some important points. How did the people respond?
Yeah, so in the auditorium, there was a lot of applause for him. I mean, he actually highlighted some of the challenges, some of the successes talk by the Akufo-Addo-led administration regarding the fact that they have introduced a number of digitalization projects to ensure that we're able to curb corruption at the ports and all those things. And he received a lot of applause. But speaking to some other participants, they were of the opinion that that wasn't the best platform for the vice president to be talking about achievement of the Akufo-Addo-led administration. But all put together, you could tell that those from all diverse, the religious body, the traditional authorities, they were so happy about the entire engagement. Yeah.
Apparently, the chairman of Pentecost Church wasn't particularly enthused about the sort of raucous, support that, to his mind, was a bit politically motivated. What did he have to say about that?
Well, he was of the opinion that as a nation, we need to shift away from partisan politics, where we want to project one political party above the national flag, for instance, national agenda. So he urged participants to be wary of that, and instead of championing the cause of their political parties, they should champion the cause of Ghana. Yeah.
Now, we also heard from former presidents, the two Johns, Kufuor and Mahama. wrap up their thoughts for us. What did they?
So basically, they are pushing for that kind of Ghana where we will move away from self-centeredness to a more inclusive, governance to ensure that we don't become self-seeking people, and we should be able to do away with corruption and all that. But mainly, the partisan politics is one of the things that they've been talking about at the conference.
Do you get the sense that those who have attended this conference are going to walk away with any intention at all of being different, of rethinking? Do you expect, from how it unfolded, that we will be seeing a new Ghana from tomorrow onwards?
Yes, I'm very optimistic. I mean, speaking to a number of MPs, they were so clear that for them to suspend sitting in Parliament and to be at the conference meant a lot to them. And so they are picking a lot of things from this conference, which is going to help them make right decisions when they get back to Parliament. So we are hoping that it will not become one of those talk shops. We want to see action after this conference. Yeah.
All right. Were there any action points made? Are there any expectations we can start to measure our leaders up against?
Not yet, because tomorrow is another session, so we are hoping that by the end of the conference we'll get some actionable things tomorrow. Yeah.
Carlos, we're glad you were there. Thank you very much. All right, there's more to come, and of course, we were privileged enough to have Carlos there to keep an eye on proceedings. Stay with us. There are more stories on the way. All right, it's Wednesday, so let's go across to our partners. The big question being discussed in Germany this week is how to deal with the far-right AfD party, especially at a time when it's becoming more and more popular, second in nationwide polls, and after it won the first local election victories. The head of the opposition opened the door for a possible local cooperation with the AfD, but had to quickly backtrack after he was strongly criticized. This week, the AfD will also hold its federal party conference to plan its future strategy. Thomas Sparrow joins us. He's a political correspondent from our partner station, DW, in Berlin. Thomas, tell us, how big is the controversy in Germany after those remarks by the opposition head?
It is a very big controversy indeed here in Germany after Friedrich Merz. He's the head of the opposition here in Germany, the head of the CDU Conservative Party, opened the door in an interview for a possible cooperation at a local level with the AfD. Only hours after he gave those statements, he had to actually reverse them, backtrack them, saying that there would not be cooperation with the far-right AfD at any level. And that came after very strong criticism both within his ranks but also from politicians that belong to other parties. This all has to do in Germany with a firewall that has been in place for a long time now, which basically meant that all other parties had complied, had promised not to work with the AfD. But as the AfD has gained momentum, as the AfD has become more popular also in the polls, as the AfD has won its first two local victories, the discussion has now actually strengthened in Germany as to how other parties, if at all, should cooperate with the AfD. There are those who say that the ban should still be in place, but others say that it should be a more pragmatic decision based on a case-by-case basis.
Right, fascinating stuff. Now, why don't you give us a bit of context? How big, how important is this? Is the far-right movement in Germany?
The far-right AfD was actually founded 10 years ago, so it's a relatively young party, and it became more and more popular after the migrant crisis in 2015 and 2016, and it profits normally, or it benefits from the fact that Germans are dissatisfied, are very worried about the current political situation in the country. And in recent weeks, in recent months, several polls have shown that the AfD, its popularity has grown. In fact, it is now second in the opinion polls behind the Conservatives. and they seem to have been profiting a lot from the current insecurity in Germany when it comes, for example, to the arrival of migrants, when it comes to the economic situation, when it comes to the war in Ukraine. And they have indeed won those two first local victories. They are small victories from a local perspective, but nevertheless, they still broke a taboo here in Germany. So as such, it has meant a big political discussion in the country as to how other parties should deal with the AfD and also how the AfD should plan its strategy. And that's precisely what we're going to see this week during the AfD's party conference in the eastern city of Magdeburg.
Right. Now, let's open this up. Let's look at the broader continental context here. Is this issue also being discussed in other parts of Europe?
Absolutely, this issue is also being discussed elsewhere in Europe, not only how to deal with far-right parties that in many countries are also on the rise, but also what kind of limitations there are to that popularity of far-right parties. We saw the issue of limitations only very recently in the election in Spain with the Vox party there, but we've also seen similar debates in other countries around Europe. However, what makes the German case particularly sensitive, what makes it particularly controversial, obviously has to do with Germany's very troubled history also. So any issue here in Germany with the far right tends to be very controversial because of Germany's troubled past. But in general, it is a debate that we're also seeing around Europe at a time when many citizens in the continent are concerned and when far-right parties in several countries are actually on the rise.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Thomas. And of course, we appreciate the update. Thomas Sparrow is our partner with DW in Germany. Okay, let's talk about something you probably haven't had to talk about in a while, COVID. The West African Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens, WACBIP, at the University of Ghana, is pushing for the COVID-19 levy to be channeled into research and innovation to improve how the country responds to health emergencies. Speaking at the Developing Excellence in Leadership, Training and Science in Africa, head of the center, Professor Awandare, says the country must take funding of research and innovation seriously and not always rely on foreign sources for support during emergencies.
On research, so far less than 10, probably about 5 African countries have done this. South Africa is one of them. Most African countries have not, taken the steps to commit more resources to research on an ongoing and sustainable basis. It's not when there's a pandemic or when there's fear and panic that we go and start putting our fires and putting some money for the research institutions. We need to fund research as an ongoing, concern. It means that every year in our national budget, we should dedicate some money to research. And this government, took the right step by passing a bill to establish a research and innovation fund. But unfortunately, it hasn't been operationalized because the startup funding has not been put into the fund. So it is time for us to operationalize that. Currently, we have a COVID levy, right? And I have suggested that from next year, now that we are quite confident that COVID is behind us for the most part, let's redesignate that COVID levy as a research levy and put that towards the Research and Innovation Fund. And what that does is that you create, a mechanism for Ghanaians to bring innovative ideas. So every year you put some money available for people to compete for with ideas. And then you commission an institution such as the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences to, go through the applications, select the best ideas, the most innovative ideas, and let's put some money on it. It doesn't mean that all of them would lead to discoveries or new products, but some of them would. That's how innovation works. You try a lot of wild new ideas, some would lead to something. You understand? If you look at all innovations across the world, normally you try new ideas, and that's how you get innovation. When we were prospecting for oil, we spent billions and billions of dollars prospecting for oil because we believed that eventually we will find the oil and it will pay for itself, which eventually we did. Okay? It's the same with science research. If you put the investment in, it may take time, but eventually it will pay for itself. You know, most of the new economies, they've shown us that. You know, Singapore, even China, they've led with innovation, and they make things for us to buy. But they invested in research and science before they got to that place. We don't want to invest, but we want to benefit. It doesn't work that way. You have to invest. You have to put resources in. So I'm here suggesting that let's convert the COVID levy to a research and innovation levy, because we're paying it anyway. Let's just put in a fund for research and innovation. Let's give out research grants every year to scientists and innovators in the country to innovate. And let's watch what will happen in 10 years. You see the kind of innovations that will come out of this country.
Now, 100,000 Ghana cedis has been donated to support various businesses owned by women in the Ododo Diodio constituency. Women's organizer of the constituency, Patience Nana Amunwa, says the initiative is aimed at promoting women empowerment in the constituency. There's more in this report put together by Jacqueline and Sumayabua.
As part of effort to empower more women in the society, aspiring parliamentary candidate for the Ododo Diodio constituency, Ni Okai Lai, has donated 100,000 Ghana cedis to support women empowerment initiatives in the constituency. He revealed that the initiative will ensure the independence of most women in the constituency.
We know that the challenge that most people face, especially within this area, we don't have lands here for farming. So it is petty trade that most of our women engage in. And more often than not, when they try to seek assistance from the traditional banks, the commercial banks or financial institutions, they are asked to bring an arm and a leg before they are approved for such loans. So if we are able to get people who are benevolent enough to be able to group and contribute. Some of them are business people and they see it as a corporate social responsibility so that they can advance at least and change the lives of some individuals within the women's wing. And I believe that it will go a long way to assist them.
The NDC woman organizer of the Ododo Diodio constituency, Patience Nana Amunwa Bruce, further stated that the money will be in the form of seed money to the woman and serve as a revolving fund.
It's a seed money he's bringing to help the women so that they can grow in what they are doing as women who are working, who are in trade. It's a revolving fund. Therefore, we are starting with 100 women. So I think every woman is getting 1,000 Ghana for the starts. And we know as time goes on, there are people who come in to support. Therefore, we'll add other women. So by the time we get somewhere, we'll make sure all the women in the constituency have gotten it to be happy.
The project, which is expected to last for 10 years, will kickstart with 100 women in the constituency. For Joy News, Jacqueline and Sumayabua.
Now, inhabitants of Dagoma Line in the Asokore Mampong municipality have accused the police in Kumasi of extortion under the guise of regular swoops. They claim the police officers charge as much as 500 cedis per suspect arrested in these swoops, which have led to the loss of 2 lives in the past year. The residents are also agitated over the arrest of innocent people in the police operations. Nanayao Jima has been interacting with some of these victims, and here's a report he filed.
Dagomba Line is probably the biggest slum in the Ashanti region, with dwellers scattered along a part of Kumasi's main rail line. It is hub of scrap dealers. Like other slums in the country, there are suspected criminals and drug peddlers taking shelter here. The police often undertake swoops when they pick information on suspects, but some residents are agitated by the violent and arbitrary conduct of swoops. Ali is a scrap dealer who has lived in the slum for decades. 3 weeks ago, he was arrested in a swoop, but he claims to be innocent of engaging in drugs.
I was on a bench in front of my shop with my girlfriend. I saw people run to my direction, but continued to sit. One of them arrested me and started searching me for drugs, but they did not find any on me. One of the officers told them to arrest me, though they did not find anything on me.
After spending 3 nights in police cell, he was bailed by his brother.
When my brother came to bail me, he was told that the officer in charge is out. So one of them took 20 cedis to place a call to the officer in charge. He then charged us 500 Ghana cedis, but after negotiations, they accepted 400 Ghana cedis.
His story is corroborated by many in the community.
They will bring maybe 3 or 4 of them. They will just park at the top, and they will come arrest people, whether you are suspect or not. They will just arrest you and take you. When you just pass into there's some call. They will ask you, "Do you have money in you? Do you have money on you?" When you say yes, they will say, "If you don't have money, you have mobile money." Or you can call someone to come and bail you. If the person is truth, you arrest the person, just take the person to court. They won't do that. They will just ask you, "Do you have money on you?" As so many occasions.
So the police have been coming here to extort you?
Yes! Yes!
Now, when I could bail you besada, and I saw to escape when you bail you besada.
Someone said, me, I could bail you. If you say,
so you've paid money for someone to be released?
A lot. Yes. Bebre.
We know muchia. Ebia mina metong no mwachi win omaji misika okona bi omajami.
When they arrest marijuana from a dealer, they go ahead and sell to another, even after taking money from the first owner.
Different seller. No more than. Omasa trauma we know we should the market. This time they any abrio.
Yeah, chua. Ebebusa says kaukura wa ebejiska na ajawo. What I say fan panico police station. What I say. Obikura ko ni baby a. Ebechin.
32-year-old Slahadin Tafifi is the second person to have died in a swoop in the enclave in the last 2 years. The youth are worried at the threat on their lives by police excesses. By law, persons arrested in police swoops are expected to be investigated and put before court for prosecution. The police in Ashanti region are yet to respond to the allegations. For Joy News, Nana Ojima reporting.
Right. Now, it's important to state that we are yet to get the police's comment on this story. We are continuing to engage them and seeking their comment on it. So we'll bring it to you as soon as we have it. All right. Well, look, it's been quite an afternoon, hasn't it? We've taken you all around, and we've got even more for you on myjoyonline.com. Go check out the biggest stories in the country. They are there for your enjoyment right now. We're back tomorrow with even more on the pulse, but until then, stay safe out there and keep your eyes peeled right here on the Joy News channel.